there is a stone channel buried beneath the earth outside certain Amish farmhouses that does something most people with central air conditioning have never thought to question. Before the air even enters the home, it passes through this underground passage, sometimes 12, sometimes 20 feet long, and arrives inside the house already cooled, already filtered, already tempered by the steady, unchanging temperature of the ground itself. No compressor, no refrigerant, no electricity, just earth and stone and the patient physics of the soil doing what it has always done, completely indifferent to the season above it. This system has a name. It is called an earth tube. It is called an earth tube, or sometimes a ground-coupled air intake, though in many Amish communities it is simply called the cold channel or the buried run. While the earth tube is a hallmark of certain Amish settlements, it belongs to a much larger global heritage of climate-responsive architecture. The physics behind it is older than the written word. In the deserts of the Persian Empire, architects developed the qanat, underground channels that carried water and chilled the air above them. They paired these with bad gears or wind catchers. Simultaneously, the Romans were refining their own version of radiant cooling. They circulated cool aqueduct water through pipes embedded in the thick stone walls of their villas, centuries before modern AC. The Amish brought these European refined variations to North America in the 1700s, primarily from Germany and Switzerland, where the technology was known as the breath of the floor. But the Amish have preserved and quietly refined it in ways that most of the modern world abandoned when mechanical cooling became cheap and widely available. In Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, these systems have been in continuous operation for over a century and a half. They are not curiosities here. They are essential infrastructure for off-grid dairy farming and food preservation. In some counties across Pennsylvania, Ohio, and Indiana, local building codes have made the installation of new earth tubes in residential construction complicated or outright restricted, which is why the title of this video is not an exaggeration. The system is, in some jurisdictions, technically illegal to build new, and yet it works. It has always worked. And the story of why it works is worth every minute of your time. Here's how it functions. To truly understand the system, one must understand the soil itself. Not all earth is created equal. Clay holds thermal energy longer, while rocky soil provides better natural drainage. This stability is the result of a phenomenon called seasonal lag. The thermal mass of the earth acts like a battery, storing the coolness of winter well into the summer months. It takes months for a heat wave on the surface to reach the depths of the stone channel, by which time the seasons have already changed. The soil is always one step ahead. At a depth of roughly 6 to 8 feet below the surface, the ground maintains a remarkably stable temperature year-round. In most of the continental United States, that temperature hovers somewhere between 50 and 60 degrees Fahrenheit, regardless of what is happening above. In the brutal heat of July, when the air outside is pressing against 90 degrees or higher, the earth 6 feet down is still sitting quietly at 55. The buried stone channel takes advantage of this. A pipe or a lined stone trench runs from a shaded intake point outside, often set into a hillside or positioned beneath dense shade trees, down to that stable depth, and then back up into the house, through the root cellar, the basement, or a dedicated vent near the foundation. Air drawn into that channel by the natural pressure difference between indoors and outdoors travels through the cool earth, loses its heat to the surrounding soil, and arrives inside the house measurably cooler than when it started. In summer, this process alone can reduce incoming air temperature by 15 to 25 degrees before it ever touches the living space. Not 15 degrees after a machine processes it, 15 degrees simply because it traveled through the ground. In the world of engineering, we measure efficiency by the coefficient of performance, or COP. A standard high-efficiency air conditioner might achieve a COP of 3.5. An Amish earth tube can reach a COP as high as 28. That is 8 times the efficiency of the best mechanical systems, achieved with almost zero energy input. What makes the stone lining so important is absorption and drainage. Raw soil tends to accumulate moisture as warm air passes through it and condenses. Without proper drainage, you get standing water, and standing water invites the kind of organic growth that belongs in a garden, not in an air intake. The Amish solution, passed down through observation rather than engineering manuals, is to line the floor of the channel with smooth river stones and slope the entire run very slightly. The stones allow condensation to fall away from the airflow without blocking it, and the slight slope keeps the system self-draining through seasons of heavy use. Modern Amish-style systems have transitioned from clay pipes to high-density polyethylene, or HDPE. The key is smooth interior walls to prevent moisture trapping. A standard run is 1 to 200 feet. Using a manifold system of multiple smaller pipes increases the surface area, making the heat exchange even more efficient. It is a detail so simple it almost disappears into the construction. But leave it out and the whole system turns against you within a single humid summer, becoming damp and problematic rather than cool and clean. The intake itself is worth describing carefully because it is not simply a hole in the ground. In well-built Amish systems, the intake is covered by a fitted stone box or a heavy timber frame with a removable screen, fine enough to stop insects and debris. This box is positioned in what the old builders called a cold spot, the north side of a structure, or beneath the wide canopy of an old hardwood tree. Some families go further and plant a thick hedgerow along the intake side of the yard, specifically to shade the ground above the channel, keeping the soil surface cool. You will sometimes find these intake boxes half buried in a hillside, almost invisible unless you know to look for them, which gives the whole setup an almost conspiratorial quality. In winter, the same system reverses its value entirely. The ground, still sitting at 55 degrees, now warms incoming air rather than cooling it. Outside air in January might be 20 degrees or colder in many parts of the Midwest, but by the time it has traveled through 30 feet of stone channel, it enters closer to 45. That is not warm by any standard, but it is a dramatic and practical improvement over raw outdoor air hitting a wood stove's draft, and it reduces the load on the fire considerably. Less wood burned over the course of a winter, less time spent at the splitting block in October, less weight on the stack pile that had to be carried and dried and stored. The buried channel earns its labor cost in both directions, summer and winter, year after year. The construction process itself reflects a kind of practical intelligence. Before a single stone is placed, the builder must read the land. The slope of the yard determines where the drainage point will go. The position of trees determines shade. There is no universal blueprint. Each installation is specific to the land it sits in, which is why this knowledge transferred through apprenticeship and observation. A young man helping his father learned not just the technique but the reasoning behind every decision. Why the intake faces north, why the floor stones are rounded. That kind of learning sticks. The installation requires real labor up front. Digging a trench 8 feet deep and 20 feet long by hand takes a full day for 2 strong workers. The stone lining must be set carefully so the channel does not collapse under the weight of the soil above it over time. Drainage must be tested before it is covered. Done correctly, the system requires almost no maintenance for decades. Some channels in active use today were laid more than 80 years ago. Done sloppily, with insufficient depth or poor drainage, the system requires excavating the whole thing and starting over. And no one wants to dig that trench twice. Here is the part that most people would never anticipate. One of the secondary effects is a measurable reduction in airborne dust and certain organic compounds. The moisture on the stone walls acts almost like a passive filter, catching fine particles that would otherwise pass straight through into the living space. Bringing air from the deep earth requires management of natural risks. Radon gas, a byproduct of decaying uranium in the soil, can accumulate in poorly ventilated channels. The Amish solve this through continuous airflow and the natural stack effect of their homes, while modern variants use bypass systems to ensure the air remains safe and fresh. Modern builders take care further, using MAR V13 filtration and periodically flushing the lines with a diluted bleach solution to ensure the air remains effectively disinfected. While the system is low maintenance, it is not no maintenance. Owners periodically inspect the intake screens for debris, replace filters, and ensure the UVC lamps are active to maintain the highest standard of air purity. The Amish did not design this for indoor air quality studies, but generations of families spending summers breathing air from the stone were receiving a hidden benefit. The air was simply cleaner, and they noticed it the way you notice the absence of something. No dusty heaviness on hot afternoons, no gritty feeling in the throat, just cool, quiet air. A practical note, the critical measurement is not length but depth. A shorter channel dug very deep will consistently outperform a longer channel dug shallowly. This is the mistake most modern retrofits make when they attempt to recreate the concept with flexible drainage pipe laid in a shallow trench. The physics requires depth. The Amish learned this through generations of failing and building again. Their rule: if you can still feel frost in the soil in late spring, you have not gone far enough. The earth tube works through passive pressure, the slight difference between indoors and outdoors, combined with the stack effect of warm air rising inside the house. This means the system works best in homes designed to cooperate with it. South-facing windows opened in the upper levels allow warm air to escape, drawing cool air in. In many Amish farmhouses, the venting rises through a simple stone column into the kitchen area, where it is needed most. The house and channel function as a single system. When both are right, the airflow is continuous and silent. There is no switch to flip. There is no thermostat to argue over. The house simply breathes. The reason this system is restricted has less to do with the earth tube and more to do with how codes were written. They were designed for mechanical, certified equipment. A hand-laid stone trench occupies a gap in the code, and when something falls into a gap, the default answer from an inspector is almost always no. It's unfamiliarity. In Indiana, building departments often classify earth tubes as experimental. This requires a professional engineer's seal to prove that the system can manage moisture and provide adequate ventilation without mechanical aid. So, why did this system disappear? In 1930, the pioneers of mechanical air conditioning strategically delegitimized passive systems to ensure mechanical units became the standard. The strategic move by the Carrier Engineering Corporation in 1930 to relegate earth contact cooling to cellars and food storage effectively erased passive design from the American architectural curriculum for the next 70 years. Passive cooling was excluded from architectural curricula and building codes for 70 years, replaced by the commercial necessity of mechanical handlers and refrigerant lines. But the physics never stopped working. Today, passive house standards are returning to the soil to meet extreme efficiency goals that mechanical units simply cannot match. At Spaceport America in New Mexico, engineers utilized massive earth tubes to temper the air of the hangar and terminal, proving that the same physics used by an Ohio farmer can support the most advanced infrastructure. For regions with extreme humidity, a closed-loop variant known as a glycol loop is often preferred. A mixture of water and food-grade antifreeze circulates through the ground. This chilled liquid then passes through a heat exchanger inside the home, providing the same thermal benefit without the risk of condensation or mold in the air intake. The glycol loop alternative has a distinct legal advantage. It often falls under standard plumbing codes. This makes it far easier for modern contractors to permit and build in regions with strict mechanical ventilation rules. In some communities, the earth tube sits alongside other passive systems, deep overhangs, thick stone walls, and root cellars. None of these were invented by the Amish. All of them were in common use worldwide before mechanical systems made them unnecessary. What is unusual is that here, the knowledge was never discarded, it was handed down. What remains is a system working quietly beneath the feet of families who have never owned an air conditioner, never paid a summer electric bill, and never looked for a thermostat. In the end, the stone channel is more than just a cooling system. It is a reflection of a philosophy that values permanence over convenience and quiet stewardship over loud consumption. It is a way of living that asks the earth for its help, rather than forcing it to comply. The earth does not run out of capacity. It doesn't need a service contract. That is not primitive. That is a working system that has outlasted every mechanical unit ever made. The legacy of the Amish stone channel is a reminder that the most sophisticated solutions are often the simplest ones. It is a testament to a community that looked to the ground for answers and found a system that would outlast the industrial age. The only reason most of us have never heard of it is that it is easier to install a window unit than to dig 8 feet into the ground, and easier is not always better.